I think parents have this beautiful idea of what self-care looks like. It looks like going to a retreat or a day spa and taking hours and hours of time to yourself, which in reality, you just can't do that. The family unit just can't continue working without parents being there pretty much 24/7. So my suggestions to a lot of the families I work with is to look at your day or look at your week and see if you can actually book in time throughout that week where you can have some breathing space. If it's going to school pickup 20 minutes early, so you can sit in the car in silence for 20 minutes before the rush of the school pickup, then fantastic. That's self-care within itself.
Welcome to the ADHD Families Podcast. I'm your host, Sharon Collon, an award-winning credentialed ADHD coach and consultant and mama and wife to a very ADHD family. I am seriously obsessed with making life easier for people with ADHD and those that support them. My business, The Functional Family, provides life-changing support and strategies for ADHD. I particularly love anything that saves time, decreases conflict, and creates space for fun. Do you want a life with your beautiful family that is more functional, fun, and full of joy? Let's explore together the wonderful and sometimes wacky world of family life with ADHD in the mix. Have you ever completely lost it at your child? Dysregulation is contagious and it is amplified when there is ADHD in the family. So our child is dysregulated in front of us, perhaps they're losing it, and because we love our kids and ultimately don't want them to be in distress or we're frustrated, we can also become dysregulated and lose it ourselves. In this episode, I'm chatting with the incredible Sam Taylor, who is an occupational therapist and the founder of Go Beyond Therapy. What she's going to help us with in this episode is how to keep our cool and how to regulate ourselves when, let's face it, we're handling situations that are pretty prone to making everyone dysregulated. In this episode, we chat about our regulation bucket. We look at healthy and unhealthy taps to help empty some of the stress out of our buckets. It's a really cool analogy and one that I really encourage you to listen to. And also we talk about OTs, how to find an OT, what to look for, how to make sure that we're getting results. And she shares so much wisdom in this episode. If you are struggling to emotionally regulate in situations that are a bit stressful in your household, this episode is for you. Welcome, Sam. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I have got so many questions for you because I know that my audience is going to absolutely love you because I think you're amazing. But before we get started, can you tell our audience a little bit about you and what you do?
Beautiful. So my name is Sam Taylor. I'm the founder of Go Beyond Therapy. I'm also an occupational therapist who supports families with a range of needs from autism, ADHD. But one of the things I love about the work I do is I support the family in a holistic view. So I support everyone in the family, not just the child.
I love that. And that's what we need, right? It's bigger. For the families that are listening to this podcast, it is always so much bigger than just one individual in the family. It's about looking at the whole unit, which is why I like the work that you do. So tell me, today we're going to talk about emotional regulation. Now, we're not going to talk about it in terms of the child, although I'm sure you will touch on that, and a lot of the strategies are for both. But I would love to focus in on emotional regulation from a parent's perspective, because what I hear a lot from my gorgeous community is that we start off being very gentle and measured about things, but when our child is dysregulated in front of us, dysregulation is contagious and we become dysregulated and we end up yelling, and then we're lying in bed at night going, oh my gosh, I didn't handle that how I wanted to. So I wanted to focus in on emotional regulation for parents and how we can keep our cool when, let's face it, stuff that's going on around us is not that cool. Tell me a little bit about what emotional regulation is to start.
So emotional regulation at its core is the ability for an individual to regulate their emotions from being in different environments and using different strategies that they have in place to hopefully keep our cool and keep our calm and just go through everyday life as calm and as regulated as can be.
Okay, so now thinking about parents, what do you think is the main challenges when it comes to emotional regulation?
We support children to take time out for themselves, to regulate, to do mindful activities, to help bring their cool down, but we don't give parents the permission to be able to do that themselves. I feel parents always have to be busy. They always need to be running their kids around to appointments and then do the laundry when they get home, cook dinner, and there's no downtime for parents so they can calm themselves down to show up the next day or to show up for the next hour or for the next appointment. And they're just running on empty. They're always just simmering away. They don't get the chance to actually decompress over different things that have happened throughout the day.
So thinking about your practice and what you do, how are parents presenting to you?
Oh, they're presenting burnt out, overwhelmed, tired, fatigued, over it. I think the parents, when COVID hit, they felt like they were on overdrive. They had to do everything. They had to be the teacher, the therapist, and the parents at home. And I don't think parents have actually had a chance to regroup from COVID, that it's been 5 years worth of burnout, and we're coming to the point where our parents are really, really burnt out. They don't have anything left in the tank. So for those parents, taking time out for yourself and to be able to recharge your own batteries is absolute key at the moment.
So I can hear when you say taking time out, and I do think the word self-care, you know how we get self-care gets thrown around a bit and it makes me want to vomit a little bit. But I know that taking time out is important, but I think the first reaction that any parent in the thick of it is going to say is like, but how? How can I find time to do that? Do you have any tips on that? Because I'd love to hear your take on that.
I think parents have this beautiful idea of what self-care looks like. It looks like going to a retreat or a day spa and taking hours and hours of time to yourself, which in reality, you just can't do that. The family unit just can't continue working without parents being there pretty much 24/7. So my suggestions to a lot of the families I work with is to look at your day or look at your week and see if you can actually book in time throughout that week where you can have some breathing space. If it's going to school pickup 20 minutes early, so you can sit in the car in silence for 20 minutes before the rush of the school pickup, then fantastic. That's self-care within itself. Just trying to find small little things within your week or day where you can take that time out for yourself and have those opportunities to recharge your own battery is key.
It's those little pockets, isn't it? Like those
Little pockets.
recharge moments. Okay. So thinking about challenges, so what in terms of emotional regulation are some common challenges that you see your clients struggling with?
I think a very big challenge at the moment is the environment in which that family is situated in, understanding the emotional regulation for the family. That at school, the child might be masking at school and they fall apart at home, and the school just don't quite understand what that emotional regulation looks like for the child when they get home. Or it's grandparents criticizing that back in my day, this wouldn't have been an issue. That I think it's that social environment around the family, having a deeper understanding of where that family is coming from and where the parents are coming from when they're actually asking for help or they're asking for reassurance or they're looking for connection. And they're being sort of pushed back with a bit of a brick wall of, well, nothing's going on. This is just how it is.
I think in our masterclass that you presented inside the membership, you had this wonderful bucket analogy.
Yes.
Do you mind sharing that here with our listeners?
Absolutely. So if you imagine yourself as a parent, you've got a coping bucket. So each bucket is different sizes for everyone. I know some mums who have got huge gallon buckets where they have so much ability to cope with their everyday lives. But then I've got some parents who have a teeny tiny little teacup and it doesn't take much for things to overflow. And over the course of our day, we have water fill into our buckets where we're not getting that time out that we need, and the stresses of the day are the water that fills up our buckets. And maybe at some point of the day, this water overflows within our bucket, and this might be a meltdown, it might be withdrawing, it might be an emotional outburst, being teary. For everyone, this sort of overflowing of the water within our buckets is different for everyone. So I know some mums who just withdraw and sit and doom scroll for an hour because they haven't got the capacity to do anything else. I know some some parents who get very emotional and will just weep. So for everyone, it's very different. And my job as a therapist is to come in and try and help support parents find ways to relieve some of that water within that bucket over the course of the day or the week. We call them taps. And some taps are fantastic at letting water out and are really good at reconnecting and resting, where some taps actually fill the bucket back up again and they're counteractive. So for some of my mums, this might be the case of drinking alcohol, that it gives them that relief at the end of the day, but it actually prevents them from sleeping well, or it impacts their mood. It might be doom scrolling on Instagram, for example, where you are getting that sort of relief from that withdrawal, but it's, again, impacting your dopamine levels, it's impacting your sleep cycle, that it's actually not being productive in sort of helping what's caused that water to be in the bucket in the first place. So the key is to try and find ways or taps to relieve some of that pressure within the bucket before we get to the point of overflowing, because if we can be proactive in our strategies, then we're not reactive at the end of the day. We can hopefully find a better balance.
What would be, you talked a bit there about some of the ones that look like taps but actually don't relieve the pressure in the bucket. What's some ones that are great taps that you have found work for your clients?
Beautiful. So great taps have been mindfulness, which mindfulness can be different for everyone. It could be a walk, it could be knitting, it could be gardening in the backyard, it could be cooking if it's not a chore for yourself. Other taps can be doing deep breathing, listening to mindfulness music, basically anything that finds calm within your life. It might be talking to someone on the phone and debriefing about how your day's been. It could be giving the kids something to do in the corner to give yourself 5 minutes just to regroup and breathe. It might be tapping in with another parent, that if you're not coping today, tag teaming with that other parent or someone else that you can call on for help to help give you that step away and to sort of really regroup and recharge.
What are some signs that our bucket is getting close to overfilling?
Some of the things that you can keep an eye out for if you are on the brink of burnout or that sort of meltdown withdrawal is irritability. So your mood might have shifted a bit. Really small things throughout your day may really irritate you, if there's a line at the supermarket or you didn't get the green traffic light, you have to sit for another 30 seconds with the red traffic light. But those really very small inconvenient things that happen in your day seem a lot bigger than what they are. Another thing that I find parents are sort of at the brink of that burnout is the relationships they have with their kids and their spouse, usually, that there's just the communication, the reflection, the connection, it's just not quite there because everyone's on the brink of burnout. Everyone's very tense, that those sort of communication gateways where you can talk about how your day's going and how you're feeling just may not be there.
I know that on a personal level, because I was oversharing in this podcast, one day my husband's going to listen to it and be very disappointed in me. But I know that what I do when I can feel myself when I'm quite dysregulated is I start thinking about escape. So I'm like, I'm going to move to the country. I'm going to like simple life. I don't know what I'm doing with the kids in this fantasy, but like I'm planning some sort of exit. I can't do, obviously what I'm facing is too hard. So I'm going to get out and do something complete life overhaul. Right. So it's always a good sign when I'm starting to Google those sorts of real estate far south coast that I'm on the brink of burnout. So it's interesting to know, like, and to be able to clock some of your tells. So whether it's like, doom scrolling, like you said, staying up a little bit too late, and I often find you get stuck doom scrolling. You're not even sure what you're doing there. Like you're looking for something, but you're not even sure what it is, and it just keeps going. And what the difference between a healthy tap and an unhealthy tap, or one that feels like you're relieving your bucket, but actually you're not relieving anything. So that was a really cool takeaway that I took away from what you just said. Okay, so thinking about when you haven't caught it, so your bucket is now overflowing, what does that look like?
Well, for everyone, I think it looks very different. So for some of my parents, it's withdrawal, it's not keeping up with basic admin tasks, it's forgetting the kids' reports or permission slips, it's those sorts of things. For some of my other parents, they become quite teary regularly over the course of their week, that really small things will sort of trigger them as such, and they'll just burst into tears. Other parents, I find, can get a bit agitated, they get a bit grumpy, and those sorts of things. But I think one of the key takeaways is for parents to be kind to themselves, that this is an emotional response to stress. This is actually a hormonal response to the hormones and the neurotransmitters within your brain because you are stressed. And it's ways to try and find strategies to try and find ways to take some of that stress away, to remove some of that stress hormone within your system so you can keep showing up each day.
I mentioned at the start of the podcast that dysregulation is kind of contagious, right? So if you see, because we love our kids so damn much and we don't want them to be under stress, once they're dysregulated, we are much more likely, because we're stressed and we love our kids and we want the best for them, to become dysregulated ourselves. I would love to talk to you about, for you to talk about in the moment strategies for when your child is dysregulated and how you can support them, but also, safeguard yourself so you don't ride that roller coaster with them.
Being able to look at a situation from like a third person point of view and listen with intent around what's going on. So being able to look at yourself in the situation going, can I step away just for a minute or two? Still see the kids within supervision and make sure they're all safe, but can I take that microsecond for myself to do some deep breathing to calm my nervous system so that hopefully they can meet me somewhere in the middle that I can co-regulate with them? Is it to do some deep breathing to not match their heightened breath? Is it to be mindful of how much you're raising your voice, that if they're raising their voice and you're raising your voice, you're just going to keep matching it and it's just going to get super loud very quickly? Can you start to whisper with them to hopefully bring their agitated voice down a little bit as well? But using those moments in the moment to sort of check in with yourself and going, can I do a couple of deep breaths here? Can I physically remove myself away from the kids if it's safe to do so? Can I give the child a fidget so I can have a bit of space? Can I put my noise cancelling headphones in so I'm not being triggered by the excessive noise that my child is making? Can I have a fidget in my pocket so I'm not waving my hands around? Really small things that you can do within yourself to help you regulate your emotions and your nervous system in the hope that you can co-regulate with them.
Love that. Now, it's one of the fascinating things, right, when we're talking about sensory profiles, and you did touch on it there, is a lot of our beautiful kids with ADHD are sensory seekers, or I know people are not one or the other, but sensory seekers, sensory avoiders. But for some reason, I notice with a lot of the mums that I work with, their children are extreme sensory seekers, so love touch and, very much on everywhere. And the parents' response, because of the exhaustion and all that they're facing, is avoidant, right? So then we've got a sensory seeker who's seeking attention and touch and stimulation with a sensory avoider. Can you first speak to a little bit of that, and also give us your wisdom on how to manage that?
Trying to help sort of look at a situation like that, think of both the sensory sort of profiles, we call it, at the same time, and going, okay, if this child, as they're becoming dysregulated, needs proprioception, needs that physical touch, needs lots of pressure within their body, are there ways that we can sort of have that but without the need of the parent? Is it weighted items? Is it going for a jump on the trampoline so they can get that pressure that they're seeking at the time? Are there ways within sort of their schedule of the day where we can give them that input they're seeking, but not being so reliant on the caregiver is the one to give them that input? Biggest thing is just heavy work. And if you Google heavy work ideas, there'll be lots of ideas that come up on Google, but lots of deep pressure, lots of pushing, pulling, cuddling, crashing to hopefully give that stimulation to the child that they're needing, but not even wearing the parent out even more, because if you're tired and you're sore and you're over it, having a child climb all over you is just, it's not going to help. So if we can find equipment or different activities that the child can do to give them that stimulation that they're needing, then that's probably what's going to be best for everyone.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you would support families in your practice?
Goodness. So a lot of it is around conversation around what home life looks like. So for a lot of the families I work with, it might be doing the sensory sort of profiles and assessments on the children, but also having the discussion with the parents about what their sensory preferences are as well, and looking where there is a misalignment. If the child is needing that deep pressure, but mum is not in a space to be able to provide it, looking at equipment to sort of meet in the middle. Are there also ways where we can get other people involved? Can we look at collaborating with the school a bit more? Are there options within the NDIS where we can get disability support workers involved? Are there community groups that we can go to? Is there the AusKick that the child does on a Friday night? Can we look at using their support system as well and relieving some of that load that parents have, and being able to tag team with grandparents or next door neighbours or another family down the road to try and relieve some of that pressure? And if not, that's perfectly fine too. We then can we look at reducing the stress at school so that when the child comes home, they're in a better headspace and more balanced, rather than coming home in such a big explosive mess, from a lack of better words. Do we need to look at educating the teacher around what ADHD looks like and how to help support them within the classroom better? Can we look at scheduling in opportunities for movement and that energy release that quite a few little people with ADHD need? Is it going to the park on the way home from school so they can have 20 minutes of just running around and jumping and climbing so that they're better regulated when they come home? Just looking at the family unit as a whole and looking at the calendar, the diary, who's involved, who we can ask for help, and trying to problem solve from there to try and get a bit more balance back in our families' lives.
If you were going to give us a few tips when it comes to regulation, what would be your kind of go-to tips that you could help us with?
I think for parents, finding really small ways to release some of that pressure over the course of the day will help immensely. Is it using noise-cancelling headphones at the supermarket because it's noisy and that extra stimulation just before school pickup means that you're not going to be your best self? And then looking at what the child goes through in the course of their day, and can we relieve some of the stress there? Can we give them more opportunities to move at school so they're not needing to move as much at home? Can we give them opportunities to express themselves at school so that they're not so emotional when they come home? Really picking apart a child's day or a family's day or a parent's day and looking at strategies that we can implement from there. Do you put a timer on your phone when you start to doom scroll to make sure you don't doom scroll for an hour and it's a 10-minute doom scroll instead?
When we're looking at overall ADHD management, we usually, like, the easiest ones to go for are the foundation of the house, which I think people in this podcast have heard me talk about before, like the slab. So those things are like sleep, diet, time in nature, and exercise, right? Like they're our foundations of overall management. Do you think that those things have a role in terms of our overall regulation?
Oh, definitely. 100%. If you're not exercising throughout the day, there might be built up energy, and you need to relieve some of that energy that a child might have over the course of their day. If the diet isn't great, it will be one of those taps that will refill the bucket. That if you're ordering Uber Eats because there's just not the time to cook, well, that artificial colours and flavourings and salt and oil and saturated fats will impact the diet and their overall regulation, that their body's then having to process all this extra additives into their food. If we're not sleeping, then our mood will be increased, which will then also impact our emotional regulation and how much we're able to cope over the course of our day. That absolutely, they are foundations of emotional regulation and being able to manage your day.
I mean, it's fascinating to me. Like, we really, like, as an adult, like, I know that I have days, if I haven't slept well or whatever, my regulation is shot. Like, I have so much less patience I'm not a patient person to begin with. And then, you go on a lack of sleep, and you're more emotional. And, as adults, we recognize this within ourselves, depending on your cycle and how much sleep you got and all that sort of stuff. But for some reason, a lot of us don't extend that same grace to our kids. Like, we don't acknowledge that they might just be having a bad day, or they might have just not be feeling the best today, or they might have had a bad sleep. And we kind of expect them to be consistent, but we just know that that's not human nature, right?
Definitely. Quite regularly, I will have a session with a family or with a child, and I'll ask the parents what happened last night. And they went, "Oh, little Johnny's been up since 2. That's probably why he's irritable." And I go, "Okay, that makes a lot of sense." So maybe we need to look at sleep as our next goal, so that we can increase our sleep and increase the quality of sleep, not just the time the child is in bed, but the actual quality of sleep, so that they're not so irritable and that they can focus and learn new skills and engage in class, rather than wondering why this child might be irritable and you're just guessing, really. So definitely.
And a lot of people get told, once if we're looking at a newly diagnosed family, so their family have been waiting all this time to get a diagnosis, and usually one of the first things that they will recommend, a pediatrician will recommend, is to see an OT. So can you tell us at that point, now I know I've steered off a little bit, but I really think this is valuable. At that point, what's the process? Because I know that there's people listening to this that perhaps haven't seen an OT yet, or they've perhaps been told that they should see an OT. Can you explain a little bit about what you guys are trained in, and then what the process is of getting an OT?
Beautiful. So OTs, it's a very broad profession, I find. So the best way I found to explain it is OTs help people do the things they need to do or want to do. So in the course of a child may need to go to school. So we can help with any sort of goal or skill that needs to be supported at school. Or they might need to do things that they like to do. They might like to develop the emotional regulation and the social skills to be able to go play Auskick on a Friday night. So OTs at the absolute crux is we help people do things that they need to do or want to do, which I find for a lot of families, when you mention that that's what we do, they get so overwhelmed because there's so much you can work on and where to start prioritizing and where to even go with therapy. So one of my suggestions when parents start out with therapy for the first time is just to keep a bit of a diary of things that may come over in the course of your day. And you go, you know what? I'd love some help on this. If it's transitions to school, you just jot it down and then you mention it to the OT in your next appointment or in your initial appointment of things that you might like to work on together. In terms of the referral process, so you can self-refer to occupational therapy. You don't need a referral from a GP. You can get Medicare rebated sessions as well, but only particular OTs can do this. So just make sure if you are looking at using Medicare that they're registered with Medicare as well. You can just self-refer. And usually the process is the therapist will get the referral and get like a bit of a basic idea of yourself and the family and the child. And then there'll be a lot of questions around what home life looks like, how's school going, where can we start supporting. They may even look at doing some assessment work so we can get a bit of a benchmark of where your child's at and see if there's any areas that haven't been able to be found that need help through just general questioning. And then we can look at the progress of therapy from there. And a lot of it is family directed because we're very goal-based, we're very person-centered and family-centered. But I find sometimes with families, they're just so overwhelmed by the process. They look at that sort of guidance from the therapist to go, how about we start here?
So how do we know if an OT has, like what I've realized is that not all OTs are ADHD, interested in ADHD or have a specialization in ADHD. How do we know that the OT we're making contact with has good knowledge of ADHD?
I would start with questioning around what the therapist knows about ADHD and other examples of families that they've supported where the child or the family unit might have ADHD, and just start questioning. You're interviewing the therapist as much as the therapist is interviewing you. So trust your gut and ask some of those questions around what experience they have, what sort of knowledge they have. And in the space at the moment, there's a beautiful key term of neuroaffirming, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a qualification or a registration process that you become neuroaffirming. So just keep an eye out in terms of how the therapist works with you, the types of questions they ask, and their overall approach to you and your family, to know if they sort of align with your family values and what you're looking for out of therapy.
It's also been my experience that a lot of OTs have ADHD. I'm just putting that out there. I mean, it's a job that is perfectly lined up for ADHD, like lots of movement, lots of sensory days, like helping people, no two people are the same. It's got lots of novelty, just flagging that as well. So, and how do we know if OT therapy is working? So like, I've seen that pop up in our support group on Facebook, that people are doing OT, and to obviously, because the parents like check in at the start of the session and maybe at the end. How do we know if it's being effective?
I suppose doing some reflection over the course of the goals that you're working on, doing some reflection on if you feel you're making progress towards them. Some goals are really big goals and it's hard to make a lot of really quick progress. So, for example, I've had a family where their goal was independent in toileting. And toileting is a really big goal. There's a lot of different elements to it, where I would then communicate to the parent and go, look, let's work towards the big goal of toileting, but let's take some smaller goals that are a bit more tangible, like being able to support the child to pull their pants up and down. Is it being able to support the child to wash their hands, so that in the scheme of things, you are working towards the independence in toileting, but it just looks a little bit different to maybe what the parents are used to, that it's not going to be an overnight fix. In saying that, though, you should be able to see some progress in life if it's strategies that the OT has been able to suggest, and if they're working at home. Is it first and then visual schedules, the usual strategies, but can the OT suggest deeper strategies that may be more individualized? And just keeping tabs on how you feel overall in terms of that goal progression. OTs can use different tools to help assist with that goal progression. So we have a lot of tools that we can use to help sort of benchmark goals and then sort of test a little bit later to see if we are making progress or not, or if the approach needs to change. And that's one of the other reasons why OTs do assessments as well, to make sure that we can see that progression and that the family is getting benefit, the child's getting benefit, and we're actually moving forward in that goal progression, not just staying stagnant and playing on the floor with an OT for 45 minutes.
Love that. Thank you so much. I think the part that I really want people to take home from this interview is the bucket, like, and having that there's taps that you can relieve some of the pressure, and knowing that the bucket is going to fill up. People have different size buckets. I'm just reiterating this bit for our listeners, but we want to make sure that the taps are healthy taps, like ones that actually relieve some of the pressure, which I really like that analogy. I think it means it's quite clear. Is there any other tip that you want to leave our listeners with?
Yes, just be kind to yourself, that you are learning as parents, the child's learning as their own person as well, that you just need to be kind to yourself, that you're doing your best in the family unit that you've got, and just take it one day at a time. No family's perfect. I think people see on Instagram these perfect families who go away for family holidays and have dinner around the table, that it's this glorified picture of what home life looks like. And I think for parents, just be kind to yourself, because you're doing your best and that's all anyone can ask.
Love that. Now, Sam, where can we find you?
Beautiful. So you can find me over at our socials and our website, which is www.gobeyondtherapy.au, or reach out via email. If you look up Go Beyond Therapy, you'll definitely find me.
I'm going to put a link to all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the ADHD Families Podcast. If you loved it, please share it on your socials. I want this to start a conversation about ADHD. If you want to make this mum do a little happy dance, please leave a review on iTunes. If you would like to know more about what we do, check out thefunctionalfamily.com. I truly hope that you enjoyed this podcast and you use it to create a wonderful, effective, joyful life with your beautiful children.